of great work, a commitment to a purpose, and the contribution of many. And by many, I mean not just many people, not just the 30,000 and the 150,000, not many in number, but many in nationality. Okay? God had chosen Abram out of the land of Ur of the Chaldeans. You know the story, right? If you're in a Sunday school class, and y'all know y'all looked at the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 15, you'll be looking at it again this week. Genesis 17, you know, there's a continuation of that covenant. God made a covenant with Abraham, right? What a wonderful thing. You say, well, some people say, well, God chose the people and God was picking and choosing teams. No, God was choosing the people to reveal himself to the world through, right? And it's a gracious act of God to say, I'm going to choose one man from all of the world, and I'm going to enter in a covenant with that one man and his family so that all the world could see how awesome it is to live in a relationship with me. That's exactly what was going on. He didn't just say, because if God had not chosen that, then nobody would ever see the benefits of walking in a relationship with a holy God. They just admit it, oh, there's a God up there, but we don't know what it looks like to be faithful to him. We don't know what it looks like to obey him, and we don't know what it looks like when he's faithful to you because there's no view of that. And in mercy, God took the initiative, and God chose Abraham, or Abram, became Abraham, and he built this nation called Israel. And he's showing the world what it looks like. And now everybody around them has temples to their God. They all have these temples to their gods, all their false gods. And for the first time in the history of the nation of Israel, they're going to build a temple to the God, their God, to the name, not to just to house God. Solomon says later on, no man can construct a temple that would house God because the world is his foot, so he created everything. So this is just a representation of their God. It was to hold his name, right? It was to hold his glory. It was to be there to reflect. Again, the temple is there to display the greatness of the God they worship. And this is the Jewish people's temple. But do you notice, the very first people that Solomon reached out to are non-Jews. The very first suppliers of materials are the Sidonians of Tyre, who are non-Jewish. And the people cutting the stones are non-Jewish. And when Solomon asked Hiram to send him someone that would build, that was a master in artwork, we'll see that later on in the 6th chapter. We see it also, and he said, I need some craftsmen. Well, Hiram says, I know another guy named Hiram. It actually had the same name. It's really cool. He said, and this Hiram is a master in metalwork, and he's a master in all this. He's the guy who carves all the ornates around the pillars. He does the baths. And he brings other people with. Well, that guy is a half-Jew. His father is a Sidonian, and his mother is a Danite, the region of Dan. Now, if you fast forward to to the New Testament, they didn't like half-Jews. Herod was half Jew. Nobody liked him. The Jewish people didn't like him. But when we look at the construction of the temple, this is the temple. The Shekinah glory of God falls in this place, so much so that nobody can go in there. There are Jews and Gentiles and half-Jews. Everybody is working. And it's dependent upon everybody. Right? It's not just one people. It's not just the Jewish people say, well, we're going to, in the construction of the tabernacle, the tent, only the Jews did that. When Nehemiah comes to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem, the people outside of Jerusalem, you remember, they want to go to the plain of Ono, right? Sanballat and Tobiah said, hey, Nehemiah, come meet us in the plain of Ono. And Nehemiah said, oh, no, I'm not going there. You remember that, right? He comes and all these people want to come help, and Nehemiah tells them, we're doing a great work to the Lord our God. You have no part in this. So then the construction of the walls is only the Jewish people. No outsiders are allowed. Nehemiah is, again, a man after my own heart there. He pulls his hair out and pulls the people's hair out, and he casts them out because they're not Jews. He said, you don't belong here in this temple. But when we look at the construction of the temple, it's the nations that are building it. And the Old Testament declares, says it in the book of Psalms, Jesus quotes it when he turns those money tables over. It is written, my house shall be a house of prayer for the nations. See, God is not just picking and choosing people. God is actually using this to draw all people that they may see his glory. Right? By the way, when Jesus turned the money tables over, do you remember where he was at? It was in the court of the Gentiles. It was the one place in Herod's temple that everybody could come into. And Jesus was upset because the Jewish people, the money changers, where you can bring your Roman currency here and we'll transfer it over to Jewish currency, and then that's the only thing that when you get into the inner recesses of the temple, we don't want Roman coins, we want Jewish coins. That's what money tables were. They were the money changers. And it's like going to Mexico and having to get your money, right? When you leave Mexico, they keep a little bit of that money back with them. So, there's an exchange rate. There was an exchange rate. And Jesus wasn't just so upset because they had this exchange rate. He wasn't so upset because they were changing currency to pay the temple tax. He was upset because they were doing this in the court of the Gentiles, which was the one place that everybody in the world had access to God. And they were obstructing it. And he gets them out of there because he says, this is to be a house of prayer. It began, the very first temple that was ever constructed was a direct result of many people and nationalities. And we see their direct contribution. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven doesn't consist of one people group. It doesn't. What's even more amazing is we never read of the Sidonians or the Jews or anybody ever bickering and fighting. Because there's a purpose greater than themselves in this. There's a right king on the throne. We're told over and over again that Solomon was wise. He's a wise king on the throne who's putting it all together. And varying people from varying places are laboring for a single cause. That sounds a lot like the kingdom of heaven to me. It sounds a lot like laboring in the harvest fields of the king who's on the throne, who's calling us to join with other people in varying backgrounds and varying racial lines and varying nationality lines and all the variances that go into the multitude of people just walking side by side and laboring for a common purpose, knowing that each one has a part. Why? Because each one was following the same plan. There's one set of master plans, right? The ones cutting the stone knew what they were cutting. The ones hauling the stone were taking it to the right people. The ones building the temple or constructing it had the same plan. Everybody was moving along. Sure, it's a great illustration of organization that even the world can use, but it's even more astounding illustration for encouragement to the church. Because we see here multitudes of people from different regions and different nationalities, and not too many years prior to this are fighting and bickering with one another. Not too many years after this, they're going to be fighting and bickering with one another. But yet here for just this moment, when they're focused on the right thing, they can do it together. And the result is astounding. What a temple. Still never be surpassed. We're not looking for another temple. We're not looking for that because we know that the true seed of David that builds the temple is Jesus Christ. But the temple he's building now, he's building with many, 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 many people, different nationalities. He's building across a worldwide thing. He's joining stones upon stones perfectly fit together to declare his glory. And he's building it from the nations, not just for the nations. It's a wonderful thing here, but we see this preparing to build in 1 Kings chapter 5. Thank you, my brothers.